welcome back to the Meet the Translator podcast. My name is Dot, and today I'm going to be chatting to Nicole Fenwick about her experience as a legal translator. She'll be sharing what she does and how she got to where she is now, providing us with lots of information on what legal translation is and what it encompasses, reminding us about that all-important indemnity insurance, and offering plenty of tips for aspiring legal translators. I hope you enjoy the episode. Hi Nicole, thank you so much for coming on my podcast today. It's really great to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's nice to be here.
So can you give a little introduction of yourself, what you do, and your journey to becoming a legal translator?
Yes, it's definitely been a journey. I am a legal translator from French into English, and I guess also a lawyer linguist. I offer other services that involve using my languages and also using my skills as a lawyer. I am the face behind Cully Translates, and I founded that back in 2018. And it's definitely been a journey since then. I kind of fell into freelancing. I was going to go in-house, but I ended up freelancing for a while just to earn some money. And before I knew it, I realised that actually, I could make a business out of this. I could live off it, fell in love with it, and here we are. The rest is history, as they say. But yeah, my background is my undergraduate degree was in English and French law. And I think from a very young age, really, I was probably about 13 or 14, and I definitely knew that I wanted to use languages in my career, definitely. And I think I always knew that I wanted to be a lawyer of some form. So I think it was only natural for me to, and that never wavered. I think we all have childhood dreams of maybe, being a police officer or being a doctor, and sometimes that changes. But for me, my love for languages has been unwavering. And I think I probably love languages more now than I think I ever did. So yeah, that's what I did for my undergraduate. And then I went into the legal profession and realised that I wasn't able to use my languages as much as I wanted to. And I think deep down, all my friends said to me, you have always been more of a linguist than a lawyer. And I think but it took me a while to realise that. I think sometimes, we have to find our own way in life. And I realised that for me, I just wasn't using my French as much. And I was doing a lot of legal translation for the firm that I was working for. The Brexit referendum had just happened, and I thought, okay, it's now or never. I need to go back to university at the age of 25 and do my Masters in Translation. Best thing I ever did. So yeah, I did my Masters in Translation and then ended up going freelance. And here we are 3 years later.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So let's kind of hop into legal translation. Let's get to the basics. What is legal translation? What does it encompass?
That is a very good question, but quite a difficult question to answer, actually, because legal translation covers so much. And I think there's also lots of other areas that will tie in quite nicely with legal translation. So, for example, I have a lot of colleagues who do medical translation, but they will also end up doing some legal translation too, just because of the nature of the documents and things. And it's similar for me. I've had basic medical documents which are more legal in nature. So I think legal translation, often you will find lots of documents that are in lots of different areas that require a legal translator to translate them. But yeah, it is like any specialism, there's so many different areas. Mm-hmm. And so it can range from something like a contract to a copyright agreement, something to do with a criminal court case, that it really does range. And you will find legal translators who are very specialised in one particular area, because I think it's really important that this is definitely an area where you have to be specialised. Mm-hmm. And I think what always springs to mind here is that if you needed brain surgery, you wouldn't want a cardiothoracic surgeon. You would want a neurosurgeon. And so it's exactly the same with legal translation. You need somebody who knows the area, and knows what they're doing. Because as much as you need to know the terminology, you also need to know how the documents are structured, how they work. And so I think for me, having having a dual law degree really helps because, for example, when I translate contracts, which I do a lot, I will understand that some of the concepts in French law do not exist in English law. And so obviously for me, I have to translate the language from a linguistic point of view, but also from a legal point of view.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think, and that probably sort of leads on to whether you can be a legal translator without a legal background, because I think that's often a question that people like to ask. And I definitely think that it helps if you have legal training. It definitely helps. There's no doubt about that. And it will definitely make you a better legal translator. However, I don't think that you have to have, let's say, a formal legal training to become a legal translator. However, I do definitely think that if that's something that you want to do, you definitely need to get a lot of training in order to do that. But a friend of mine, she has no legal background, but is just very, very passionate about the legal industry and about a very particular area of the law. And so she's gone away and taken professional qualifications in that particular area, very, very niche, and has done lots and lots of CPD. And now she's a fantastic legal translator into Spanish. You know, but she doesn't have a law degree. Her background is languages. But that just goes to show that, you know, if you're determined and it's an area that you really want to get involved in, then you definitely can do it. But you just need to be prepared to work at it a lot. Like any specialism, language is a living phenomenon. So you always need to make sure that you're working on it, whether it's legal translation, creative translation, or medical translation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's, at the end of the day, it's the knowledge that you've got and not the certificates that you have to show what you've done. Obviously, exactly. It helps to be able to show clients proof that you have that knowledge, but at the end of the day, like, it is the knowledge that you need. So I guess it doesn't really matter how you go about getting that.
No, definitely. And I think I'm a massive advocate of people being able to access a particular career through a non-conventional route. I'm a huge advocate of that because university isn't for everybody. And I definitely think that it's important that there are alternative routes and that you can come at it at a later stage in life. You know, I have mentees who've worked in other industries, but language has always been a part of their career, and now they want to specialise in translation. And, you know, and I don't think it's never too late. Definitely not. And I definitely think that it's something that it's just something that you have to work at.
Mm-hmm. And it's not always something you have to spend loads of money on as well. Like, there's different, definitely not. I've been kind of developing my skills through some of the free courses that the Open University has, or like you can, I don't know, do volunteering or like internships and things where you can like get that knowledge other ways than spending all your money on courses and university and things, I guess.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's a really good point. And I think one of the advantages, if we can call it an advantage, of the last 18 months is that there's a lot of resources that are now available online. Because, you know, everybody's sort of been in a difficult place in life. And so I think there's been more resources online to help us develop our businesses and generally just to keep us out of mischief, really. And I think that there's been some great courses out there. And I think, I definitely used it as an opportunity to think, okay, you know, how can I make myself better now? How can I look back and think, okay, that was a difficult time in life, but I did lots and lots of CPD and I really improved my skills so that when the market picks up again and when life goes back to normal, whenever that will be, whether it be a new normal or whatever, then, you know, you've armed yourself with lots of new skills, which I think is really important.
So now that you're a legal translator, you said that you kind of came from a legal background and went into it that way. Is that why you decided to do legal translation over something else? Were you ever thinking about any other kind of areas of translation, or you just like, I've got this legal background, this is what I like, I'm going to be a legal translator?
Yeah, I think for me it was, I mean, if you believe in destiny, I think for me that's where I was. That's always what I was going to do. And I think, you know, it can be a difficult time in your life when you're doing a master's in translation and you are trying to figure out what your specialism should be. And I think for me, it was always very clear. I was never going to really do anything else. Don't get me wrong, I have lots of other interests. I'm not a complete legal nerd. I mean, mainly I am, but, I have lots of other interests and lots of other passions. But I do think that for me, it was just a natural progression, really. And I think I was very lucky that that was the case, because I did my master's with some fantastic people, and they maybe hadn't been in the world of work as long, or they maybe had just done their undergraduate. And so they were still kind of finding their way and trying to figure out what sort of translation they wanted to do. And the course that I did at Durham was very good, because they gave us the opportunity to do different types of translation. And I was obviously, when I heard that there was a legal translation module, I was super excited and I couldn't wait for it. And all of the other people in my French to English translation class were like, "Oh, Nicole, this is going to be so dull." And they really weren't looking forward to it. But I was like, yeah, this is going to be great, guys. But yeah, equally, there were some other areas that maybe weren't as interesting for me. But it was really good. We looked at things like journalistic texts, environmental texts, literary texts. So it was good to have that. And again, I think that kind of reinforced to me, yeah, legal is is what I want to do. So for me, it was a very natural progression, really. But I do dip my toe into other areas. So, for example, I translate the press articles that come out of the European Parliament every day. So again, yes, there's a legal element there, but generally they're just, it's European politics and European affairs, which again is something that I'm really, really interested in. So yeah, I do quite a lot of work like that too. I definitely think that they are kind of interlinked.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because it's something we touched upon in the first ever podcast episode, which you actually recorded a little snippet for, that we had in there about the fact that often doing your masters, a lot of the time, like me, I came straight from doing my undergrad, went into the masters. I hadn't really got any background in any particular specialism. And I didn't even realize at first that you needed a specialism. I was like, oh, I just translate content. Like I can just translate anything when I know the languages. But that's just, I learned very quickly that that's not true. But it was kind of hard to be like, okay, now what do I specialize in? Like, what do I like? What am I knowledgeable in? And I think a lot of people start out like that, not really knowing where to go or what to do. And I guess for me, I was kind of like, okay, I knew straight away, I was like, I'm not going to go into legal or medical, because it was really daunting. I was like, their basically whole nother languages, you have to learn. Yeah. And I was like, I feel like maybe to do those kind of things, you have to really, really love it. And I think it's so cool that you love legal stuff so much, because I think a lot of people would be like, oh, that sounds really boring. Not to cause any offense, but
no, of course. I be honest, so many, I look at other people, especially like you, who have a much more sort of creative field. I think, oh, that must be so cool to be so creative, because to be honest, there's only so creative that I can be with a legal document. But we're all different, and that's obviously really important. And I think for me, if I'm really honest, I think what it boils down to is that I think often when you ask somebody why they want to be a lawyer, one of the most common answers, as cliche as it sounds, is I want to help people. And I think that was definitely a huge part of why I wanted to be a lawyer. I wanted to make sure that people knew their rights, had access to the advice that would allow them to make sure that they can enforce those rights. And I think for me, that was always something that was really important. And I think with legal translation, the way that I see it is, it just, it provides a way of people being able to enforce their rights, because they understand them in English, and I can give them that. And I think in a way that's quite special, really. And it means that I can, some of the things maybe aren't as exciting as others, but if I can translate the documents associated with a property purchase in France, for example, that could be somebody's dream home that they've always wanted to, retire to, or whatever. They've been saving up for their whole lives for that, and I can translate those contracts so that they know what they're getting themselves into. Or equally, if somebody maybe wants to get married in the UK or something like that, they're really special moments in people's lives, and you really don't want the legal side of things getting in the way. And so obviously that's something that I can help with.
Mm-hmm. When you say about sort of helping people with it, are there different kinds of ways that you write the content in English? Because like I'm not sure if it's called like simple law or something. I don't know. Because I feel
English.
like plain English. Because like I personally, a lot of the time I'll look at a legal document, and it might be like 30 pages long, and B, I'm like, I have no idea what half of these words are. I'm like, who is this person? What does this mean? Like, a lot of the time I struggle to understand it, which is, I mean, one of the main reasons that I would not do a legal translation, because if I can't even understand the English. But like, is there different kinds of translation where you translate it into that kind of English where it's very like the kind of language that like people like me don't always understand? Or do you also have it in like more simpler versions where like it's like I'd be able to understand it?
Yeah, both. I think you've basically hit the nail on the head there with the legal industry. There are lots of documents that are extremely long. That's just standard, and they're also usually very difficult to understand. And so for me, it depends who my audience is really. If I'm translating something for another lawyer, an English-speaking lawyer, then obviously they may not necessarily understand the nuances of French law, but they, as long as I'm putting it into coherent English, they will understand what's going on. And I can use legal language because they're trained lawyers. However, if it's for a lay person, so somebody who isn't like yourself, who isn't a trained lawyer, then yeah, I will often change the way. Well, I definitely will change the way in which I translate something, because obviously, if they're wanting to understand exactly what's going on, then that's my job. I'm the one who gives them access to that. And if they don't understand, even if it's in English, perfect English, legal English, like you say, is a completely different language. It really is. So yeah, I think it's you definitely need to be aware. Again, something we're always taught: you need to know who you're translating for, because that is so important in any specialism.
Yeah, that makes sense. So I'm going to move on to a question which we've had from Kelsey, who asks, what steps do you take to mitigate any liability issues that may arise from your translations, other than delivering brilliant translations, of course?
Yeah, I think that's a fantastic question from Kelsey. And I think I'll make it specific to legal translation, but I think it applies to any area of specialism. And I think the first thing I would say is make sure that if you are a freelance translator, that you have professional indemnity insurance. It is really, really important. No matter what area you're working in, it's really important that you have that. Some clients won't work with you if you don't have it, but more importantly, you need to protect yourself and your business, because what you don't want happening is that you get sued for something that, we're all human. Mistakes do happen, and we can do everything to avoid them, but sometimes, unfortunately, they do happen. And that's why we have insurance. In the same way that you insure your car, if you have a bump on the way to the supermarket or something like that, you've got your insurance there. It's exactly the same. So yeah, definitely, if you haven't got it, make sure that you get that, because it's really, really important. For me, I just make sure that I have a very, very rigorous quality assurance process. So I will translate something, but I will often have an external proofreader, which is something that I will obviously make sure that I have approved with the client, etc. But that is something that's really important, I think. And a lot of translators generally will work like that. But definitely legal translators, they will have somebody else who they work closely with, because I think that's definitely really, really, really important. I will make sure that I do lots and lots of research. I won't take on projects that are in an area that I don't know anything about, unless it's something that perhaps is, say, for example, it's a bit more journalistic in nature, and it's legal, but it's not purely legal, and it's not necessarily for a legal audience. It sort of just touches on the area. Then perhaps that's more acceptable, because I can do my research which is one of the things that I love about this job. But yeah, for me, I wouldn't translate really niche maritime law, because that is not an area that I know nearly enough about. So yeah, I think it's really like in any area, it's about knowing your limits. And I also make sure that I have really good insurance that has very high thresholds, just for peace of mind, and also for my clients' peace of mind, because I think it's, again, like I said, some people will not work with you unless you have that in place. And I think actually last week I had a call from a translator friend who is also a legal translator, and there was some concerns about a translation that they produced, and someone was questioning whether there was an error in it, and the consequences of that obviously could have been huge. And they do now, but they didn't have insurance. Something that they knew they needed to get, but they hadn't. It was one of those things, I'll get round to it. Don't put it off, because what you don't want is for you to lose everything that you've worked so hard for. So yeah, it's really important. That I can't stress that enough, really. If that's the only thing that you take away from this podcast episode, then it is really important. And I know that professional organisations, like I'm part of the CIOL, they will recommend providers. So and the ITI will do the same, I'm sure. So yeah, definitely make sure that you look into that.
Yeah, I that's something on my to-do list that you've just sparked me to do right after we've recorded this. But I did recently, for anyone who's an ITI member, they have a little webinar which you can go and watch, and it's like an hour long, I think, and they talk about indemnity insurance for translators, and they recommend someone as well. So that's
excellent.
That's really,
that sounds like a good that sounds like a very good webinar to watch. So yeah, in short, in answer to Kelsey's question, make sure that you have a very rigorous quality assurance process. Don't be afraid to ask experts. I'm very lucky that I have a lot of friends who are lawyers. I have a lot of good connections in the industry, so I can get their advice about particular things. Make sure that you've got that insurance, and make sure that you are not translating something that is completely out of your comfort zone, that you know absolutely nothing about. Again, this is where being niche and being specialized is really, really important.
So another thing that I wanted to ask about, which this gets thrown around quite a lot with clients looking for a certified translator. What is a certified translator? Is that anything to do with legal translation? Do you need to be certified to be a legal translator, or should all translators be certified? What's that about?
I'm so glad that you asked this question. So glad, because this is it. Honestly, if I had £1 or €1 for every time I was asked this question, I would honestly be a millionaire. So yeah, thank you for asking that, Dot, because it's a really, really good question. Okay, so I'm a certified translator because I am a member and a chartered linguist as part of the Chartered Institute of Linguists. So as a member, I'm able to certify documents from French into English. And again, if you're a member of the ITI, I know it's exactly the same, but I think with ITI, they give you a really snazzy stamp, which that's another reason for me to become a member, because I need one of those stamps. But you don't need to be, you can certify documents. If you were a member, you can certify a document. It doesn't have to be a legal document, absolutely not. I would say that sometimes, just purely because of the nature of organisations that want certified translations, sometimes they are legal documents. But, it can be something that I've done a lot of in the past is somebody who's wanting to study in the UK, and they need a certified translation from French into English of their transcript from a French-speaking university, something like that, or a birth certificate to apply for a British passport or something like that. So yeah, it may be legal in nature, but it definitely doesn't have to be. And I think that it is a bit confusing, because a lot of clients will ask me, are you a sworn translator? Now, we don't have sworn translators in the UK. They don't exist. The closest thing that we have is a certified translator. Whereas in France, for example, and in lots of other civil law jurisdictions, they will have sworn translators. So, for example, in France, if you're a sworn translator, you're actually a sworn translator for a particular court. So you're actually sort of affiliated with a particular court, and you can do sworn translations for them. But yeah, we don't have sworn translators in the UK, but I can offer certified translations, and I often do. And then there's also other types of services which people sometimes get confused with. So they might need something notarized or something. They might require a notary to do that. So, for example, I can provide a certified translator, a certified translation, and then a notary can notarize that and make sure that it's that it has the legal force that it needs in whichever jurisdiction you need it. But yeah, I think you can be a certified translator without having a legal background or without being a legal translator. Definitely, I know lots and lots of people that are.
Okay, so tell me about the stamp. Like, how is it a virtual stamp that you put on something when you've translated it if it needs to be certified, or do you have a physical stamp? Do you have to send things hard copy, or what's that about?
Yeah, so it's I haven't got one yet, but from my understanding, it's a lovely little stamp that you physically will stamp the certified translation with. Something that it's really important to emphasise for certified translations is the advice from professional memberships like ITI and CIOL is always to send it in hard copy where possible. That's really, really important, because obviously if you do send it via email or whatever, there is a chance there that it can be altered and things like that. Pages can be added to it. What I will often do is it depends what it's for, and it depends what the client needs really. But I might send them a PDF copy of what I've produced for them, but it will be very clear that it is a copy of my certified translation. And I will always send a hard copy of my certified translation. And it will have a stamp on it, but at the moment it will have my signature on every single page, and it will be clearly, don't use paper clips. Make sure that you are, because again, they can, there's more chance of interference or, potential fraud there really, where people are moving the pages around. So yeah, I make it very, very clear. I usually will staple it and sign over it, so it's very clear if anybody tries to interfere with it. There's lots of little tricks that you can do to make sure that it's, as authentic as it can be.
Okay, that's interesting to know, because that's not something I ever have to deal with my translations. I've never had to do a hard copy of anything. It's all
I guess the nature of what you do is is not something that you would necessarily need. But yeah, just know that you have the option.
Yeah, I can't imagine
a copy of their website copy.
I was like, I can't imagine doing a blog post translation and then them being like, "Can you please send that as a hard copy?" I mean,
you never know. Never say never.
True. So you've kind of said about how there's all these different kinds of like legal translation texts. What's your favourite to work on?
I think for me, what I do the most of is contracts. And obviously contracts will range. There's a huge range of contracts. We contract with people every day. You contract with your clients, I contract with mine. But yeah, I do a lot of contracts in particular areas, so property contracts. What I also really, really enjoy, and again, some people find this very boring and perhaps even morbid, but an area that I specialised in when I was in legal practice was private client work. So things like wills, and things like that, wills and probate, and also things like powers of attorney and things like that. A difficult time in life, but really, really important. And again, it means that you are working so closely with people, and you are really, you're really helping people. I mean, being able to help somebody with that part of their life is a huge privilege. And so for me, that was an area that I always enjoyed. So again, things like powers of attorney or things like wills, again, very, very specialised, and I think very interesting for me, because I think wills are probably one of the sort of in lots of jurisdictions, the way that a will is written is so specific, and the language that's used, certainly with English wills, it will probably, you'll read it and you'll think you've gone back hundreds, if not thousands of years. The way that it's written, which to me is fascinating, and I think it's definitely an area that I really enjoy. So in recent work, for example, somebody asked me to translate some documents in relation to how a property was owned in France, because one of their parents had died, and obviously they were looking at the estate and looking at making sure that was distributed to all of the beneficiaries. So again, a really, really, really important thing to do. But equally, I can work on contracts that are completely different to that. So I think probably the most interesting contract I've ever worked on was probably about 2 months ago, and it was a contract for a French explorer who was leading an expedition to the Antarctic. And this is what the contract was about. Really, really interesting. And it's always really nice when you get contacted by a client and then you Google them and you're like, wow, this person's famous. Probably the most famous person I've done work for, really. But that's amazing. And this person is really, really passionate about what they do, about climate change, about making sure that they are preserving these very, very special environments that we definitely don't want to lose. I'm sure David Attenborough would agree with that. But also preserving the life that's there, and very, very niche and minority languages, which again, something very close to my heart. So for me, that was just a dream project, and that client was absolutely lovely to work with. So I'm hoping that we can work together again in the future.
So do most of the clients that you work with, are they mostly direct clients then? From what you've just said, it sounds like there's a lot of direct clients, or do you also get this kind of work through agencies?
I work with both, really. I do work with a lot of direct clients, but I also work with translation agencies. But I am very selective in the agencies that I work with, because, as we know, and as we've discussed in the past, agencies don't always offer very competitive rates, but also, the nature of the work that they're offering you and the turnaround times can be completely unrealistic for the legal translation in some instances. However, I must admit that my experience of translation agencies, the ones that I work with, has been hugely positive. Really, really professional, fantastic project managers, very, very supportive. And there's probably 3 or 4 agencies that I've worked with from the very, very beginning of when I first started out, and I worked with them, sometimes on a daily, certainly weekly basis. And the work that they send is very good quality. They pay well, and it's just a different way of working. But it is nice sometimes to have that, to work with a translation agency who obviously knows how things work, but you don't have to directly interact with the client. But equally, I love the side of my business where I have that direct contact with the client, and I can really, really, really get to know exactly what it is they want and how I can help them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess it's nice to have that balance. I definitely find that with my work. I like having the balance of direct clients and agencies. So for anyone who is listening to this and thinking, I'd quite either they're already a translator and they want to go and specialize in legal translation, or they're just kind of I don't know, maybe they're already in the legal industry and wanting to go into translation. Do you have any advice for them, or can you kind of explain, is there a route that you'd recommend going into it? Or, as you kind of said before, I guess there's a lot of different ways, but what advice do you have anyway?
I think for somebody who's thinking of becoming a legal translator, I think I definitely wouldn't rule anybody out. I don't necessarily think that you have to have done a law degree or anything like that. Yes, that definitely helps. But what I would say, I think, is that if you want to become a legal translator, you have to be prepared to work on your knowledge all the time, because the law is constantly changing, and so is language. So you kind of have 2 challenges, really, because you need to keep up to date with your language, but also with your knowledge of your area. But that's that's true of any area really. It will be the same for something like medical translation. But I think my advice to you would be, definitely if it's something that you're thinking of doing but you're not sure if it's an area for you, then maybe think about contacting somebody who's already working in the industry. So somebody like me, for example, who mentors emerging translators, so that you can kind of get a feel for what it's really like being a legal translator day to day, and also discover what sort of area you want to work in within legal translation. What area do you want to specialise in? Because again, like we said, it's really important that you're a specialist within that area. You can't just be a legal translator, because there's no way that you can cover all of those areas. It's just, even if you're superhuman, it's just not practical. Make sure that you're attending either virtually or in person industry events and things like that. First and foremost, you have to have a passion and a very keen interest in the law, because otherwise you'll probably just find it very, very boring. And this is something that I always say to my mentees, you always do better at things that you enjoy. So if it turns out that actually you think that legal translation is a bit dry or something like that, that's what you're going to be doing for a long, long time until you retire, potentially. So make sure that it is something that you really want to do. And I think the best way that you can do that really is to get experience, do a lot of research, attend industry events, speak to lots of other legal translators, and sign up for my mentoring program.
Yeah. Actually, I was going to ask you about your mentoring program. Is it specifically aimed at people who are wanting to become legal translators, or is it for everyone?
It's funny you should say that, because I don't have any mentees at the moment who are wanting to specialise in legal translation in particular. One is sort of on the fence and is thinking about it, but no, all of the others do very, very, or are very interested in other areas. They've either decided on an area, or they're at that point where they're trying to figure out, what's their niche going to be. So no, absolutely not. My program is very much about setting up as a freelance translator, all the skills that you need, all the practical side of things, things that you need to put in place, such as professional indemnity insurance, things like that. It's a very practical mentoring program. Yes, we can get down to specifics. I mean, there's nothing more interesting for me than having a good old chat about legal translation, how I can get into that. But equally, it's really, really interesting for me to hear from my mentees who really want to get into creative translation, or they are really, really passionate about sustainability or marketing, or all the other areas that you can think of. So no, it's definitely not just for legal translators, but obviously, because of my background, if that's something that you're interested in, then obviously I would love to hear from you, and then I can make it much more specific to legal translation. But no, it doesn't have to be specific to legal translation. I'm definitely open to other specialisms.
Okay, I'll put a in the show notes of this episode, I'll put places where people can contact you, and a link for your mentoring program as well, for anyone who does want to go and check that out.
Thank you so much. That's very kind of you.
So when people start out and they start getting their legal knowledge, they practice their languages and everything, like, how do you find those clients in the legal industry? We all kind of know how you find the agencies, but where do you find those direct clients to do the legal translations?
I think, like in any industry, that's the question that we all want the answer to, isn't it, really? Where do we find those dream clients? I mean, I'll tell you a little bit about how I found them, because I'd come from that industry. I did have some quite good contacts. So colleagues and friends of mine who were in the legal industry, if they need something translated from French into English, oh, I know who'll do that. Nicole, she saw the light, moved from the legal industry, and now she's doing legal translation. Equally, if there's another language combination, I'll have colleagues who'll say, oh, Nicole, do you have anyone that you can recommend? And I often do that, which is one of the things that I really like to do, and I love about our industry, in that it's very collaborative, and we will often refer work to other people, and we can recommend people, which is brilliant. So yeah, I think it is a difficult one, but I think once you know what area you want to work in, then obviously it's a lot easier, like in anything, for you to target, for example, law firms who specialise in that particular area or do a lot of work in the Spanish-speaking world or the French-speaking world. But I think I think trying to find direct clients is always a tricky one, really. And I think if they come to you, fantastic, that's all. That's always the dream, in that they contact you. I think a really important thing is for you to make sure that you are out there, you're active, you are hanging out where your dream clients hang out. And obviously that helps them find you, because there's always going to be an element of them finding you. And I think that also, word of mouth is really important. So many people will say, "Oh, Nicole, one of my clients asked for something legal. It's the last thing that I want to do. Please, can you help me?" So again, word of mouth, like in any industry, is really, really important. So yeah, but I think if you've decided whatever you want to work in, then that would, you can then start to narrow down your potential clients and approach them. I think something that I really, really want to do is, in the past, I've been to a lot of legal conferences, and I've never, ever met a translator at one. So what I'd really like to do is, I'm double jabbed, and now things are changing. Now things are hopefully improving and moving in the right direction, and things are starting to become, there are in-person events and conferences. What I'd really, really like to do is attend a legal industry event and speak to legal professionals and see how I can help them, really, because I'm almost certain that I can help them. Often, like in lots of professions, they don't necessarily know how translators work. And I think, again, it's about educating people. And I think the chances of there being another legal translator at a legal industry event like that, if there is, there's probably maybe going to be one at a push. So again, that's perfect for me. That's like the dream, because basically I've got, lots of potential clients in one room. It's just a case of me, making those connections, networking, and making sure that they know who I am and what I do and how I can help them help their clients, really.
And I guess that's something that, like, you have to have a lot of confidence to do that. Like, I've recently started going to in-person events again, but I didn't really go to any before because of COVID, but I started going to some, but they're like translator events with loads of other translators, and it's so easy to get on and talk to everyone because we all have similar experiences. I can imagine it's quite daunting turning up to an event where everyone has a completely different job, and obviously you have the legal knowledge, but like going up to people and being the only translator, it must be quite daunting to do that.
Yeah, I would imagine it is. I'm talking about this is what I'm going to do, but I've not yet thought how. I will be able to do it, but I'll definitely have to psych myself up for a good few weeks. The old imposter syndrome will definitely kick in. But at the end of the day, I can talk for England or Spain or any country, and I just, I'm a really friendly person, and I'm really passionate about what I do. I'm interested in what they do. We're all human, so I think there's nothing stopping us having a really nice conversation. And I think ultimately one of the things that I really live by is that people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so I think that, if it's obvious that I'm really passionate about that area and it's something, and I'm good at what I do, then I think, kind of to a certain extent, the deal is done, really. But yeah, I think you do have to, I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as I'm definitely not a shy person, but I wouldn't necessarily classify myself as a confident person either. I work really hard at what I do, and I think I'm pretty good at what I do, and I love it. But I think, like anybody, we all have our struggles with our confidence. But I also think that it's really important sometimes to push yourself out of your comfort zone. And I think I saw actually yesterday that you went to a wild swimming event with other translators, which is really, really cool. And I have a couple of other translator friends who are also into their wild swimming, which I think is fab. And you obviously said that you pushed yourself out of your comfort zone there. And it's a little bit scary. What happens if nobody talks to me? And what happens if I'm swimming by myself? But there's going to be other people that are going to want to talk to you there. And like you say, you all have common interests, because you're there while swimming and you are all translators. So that's, what a fantastic group of people. And equally, if I decide to throw myself in at the deep end and go to a legal conference or legal industry event, then we're going to have some things in common, even if it's the fact that simple, and I say this to my mentees, sometimes simple things, that's why it's so important that, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, things like your website copy and things, something that I recently redid my website copy myself, and I wanted to make it very clear that the sort of person that I am, as well as being a professional, the sort of service that I offer. And for me, it's really important that I offer a friendly service. Why can't a fantastic service also be friendly? And I want my clients to enjoy that. And so I think, it's really important to just be yourself and make sure that you make connections with people, but just find something that you have in common. You'll be, honestly, the amount of people that have said to me, just from looking at my website or looking at other networks that I'm on, "Oh, Nicole, you have a dog. You love dogs too." Yes. Anybody who says that they love dogs, instant connection. Something as simple as that. It's, or cats or whatever your animal of choice is. Rabbits. I know you're a rabbit fan. So just how many people at that conference, I mean, this might sound a little bit silly, but how many people at that conference will have a dog? They might be lawyers, but I bet they love walking their dog when they get home from the office after a hard day. Things like that are just the human element. I think it's really important that we never lose that. And at the end of the day, there's always going to be something that we can find to talk about, even if it isn't about the law, because dogs are way more interesting than the law, definitely.
No, I know what you mean. I'm the same. Like, if with rabbits, I love posting pictures of my rabbits, and it's a great way to spark conversations. But I think, like, from all this, like, to get clients to do well in the industry, like, you just have to network.
Definitely.
I'm the same. Like, so much of my work comes from people that I know or people that have referred me to someone, and it's like, see, I just joined the ITI and the Northwest Translators Network last month, and I'm kicking myself that I didn't join it sooner, because the past 2 years I've been networking on LinkedIn, on Instagram, and it's great. I absolutely love LinkedIn. It's amazing. I've made amazing connections and friends, but now it's like, I could go to in-person things. There's people that actually live nearby, and there's different kinds of people that do different things in different ways. Like, they're not necessarily on LinkedIn, they network in different ways, and I'm learning so much from them. And it's just like, and the wild swimming, of course, like anything, like it's a really nice way to network in a casual way. Because my biggest thing was like, I don't wear smart clothes. I don't have smart clothes. And I was like, how am I going to go to a conference or go to a translation event when I don't suit smart clothes? Maybe I just haven't found the right ones, but that is such a silly thing. So I was
maybe we should go on a shopping trip.
Maybe, but I was like, wild swimming is great because I don't have to turn up looking smart. I'm literally gonna get in a lake, like.
Well, exactly, and I think, but also I think in our industry, we don't have to. It is more relaxed in that sense, and that you can be smart. You can be the best translator in the world, and you can rock up wearing your Vans or your Converse. Like, I love my Vans. I would live in them if I could. I often do. So there's nothing wrong with that. And there's certain instances where we need to look a bit more smart and make a bit more of an effort, which is quite nice actually. It makes a change from the gym wear that we often wear when we're at our desks. But I think I think it's that age old thing of, it's not what it's who you know. I think it's that's really, really important, because obviously that will help you to build your networks and word of mouth and things. That's great. But I also, like you said, I think it's great that you're meeting other people in different ways, because I think there are translators who we are known for being quite introverted, and so some translators, they aren't on. They maybe aren't on LinkedIn at all, or they're not on Twitter or on Instagram or anything like that. So in-person events, it's really, really nice to meet people who are really good at what they do, really passionate and experienced, and we can learn a lot from them. But maybe they don't hang out in all the places that we hang out, which is absolutely fine. But like you say, you meet different people in in-person events, which is, you see some familiar faces from LinkedIn and things, but you also get to see new faces. So I think that's really good.
Yeah, and it's not only about getting work from each other. Like we're learning so much from each other as well, and like
Definitely.
it's also just having friends, like having
Yeah.
like colleagues without actually being sat in an office with people every day. We can still have colleagues and we can go to co-working spaces, and we can, you know, have like human interaction, and it's really nice.
That human interaction that we all crave, especially after the last 18 months. I think it's definitely, and I think for me, the networking is kind of an added bonus. But for me, for example, when I first started my Instagram account, it started me in Eastern Europe, posting a few pictures of terrible translations that I saw in supermarkets that will remain nameless, and on menus and things like that. And then it kind of evolved from there. But as well as LinkedIn, but on Instagram, I've met, that's how we met.
Mm-hmm.
And I've met lots of other translators who are now, who are fantastic colleagues and also really, really good friends who I really look up to and who have taught me a lot. For me, that's the most important thing. I mean, of course, if they send work my way or ask me to do work for them, that's lovely. That's fantastic. I really, really appreciate that, of course.
Mm-hmm.
But just having colleagues that I can reach out to and say, what would you do in this situation? I'm having this issue, or I'm not really sure how to go about this. That's
mm-hmm.
really, really important because, when you are freelance, you don't have that structure of, a big business where there's, a manager to ask or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Or you can ask HR about certain things, or you can ask legal about terms and conditions and things like that. Yeah, I think it's something that's a fantastic thing about our industry, is it's definitely refreshing from things that I've experienced in the past. An industry which is very much collaborative, rather than competitors. Because there's lots of other French to English legal translators out there, but is their service as friendly as mine? Maybe not. How are they treating themselves? Mm-hmm. It could be more friendly, less friendly, and the things that their prices could be different, the types of service that they offer. There's lots of ways in which we can differentiate ourselves. Mm-hmm. So I think I always really, really appreciate the collaborative environment that we're in.
Mm-hmm. And they might not have a dog, so that's
well, exactly. Yeah, that is very true. always a bonus. I really feel sorry for them. But if they get a new puppy, always happy to puppy sit.
Okay, right. I think we're sort of coming to the end. How can people get in touch with you if anyone has any more questions for you, or they want to just chat with you, they want to join your mentoring program, or if they are a client and they're looking for a legal translator?
You can find me in all sorts of places, really. You can find me on my website, which is www.collitranslates.com.
Mm-hmm.
My email address is info@collitranslates.com. Mm-hmm. You can also find me on Instagram under the handle Collie Translates, which again you can see what I'm up to and what I've been working on and what I'm all about. And I think if you have a look at my website or if you have a look at my Instagram, you'll see how I work, who I like to work with, find a little bit about behind the scenes. But yeah, I would love to hear from anybody who wants to get in touch. And recently I also created a free template for terms of business for translators or freelancers in general.
Mm-hmm.
And I think quite a lot of people have found those quite useful because, again, I know lots of people either have no idea how to use their terms and conditions, don't really understand them, or they just agree to other people's. So yeah, if you're looking for a free template of terms of business that can be used for freelancers that are in plain English, so I promise that you will understand them, then get in touch with me and I'll happily provide that resource to you.
Oh, thank you. That sounds great. I'll put all of those links in the show notes as well, so it's really easy for anyone just to click instead of typing it all out.
Perfect. Thank you so much for having me. And anybody, if you've got any questions, ask away. I'm always happy to answer questions. And there's no such thing as a silly question. And I can guarantee you that if you want to ask a question, there's at least one other person in the world who also is wanting to ask that question. So yeah, I would absolutely love to hear from you, and my inbox is always open.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming on my podcast today and sharing all of your knowledge. It's been really interesting for me, actually. I'm surprised how interesting I found, not that I didn't think I'd find it interesting, but I'm surprised how interesting I've found learning about legal translation when I'm someone who's really not into legal stuff.
Have I converted?
I mean, I might not become a legal translator, but I'm really interested that I now know more about it and about the thing that I don't want to do.
No, that's absolutely fine. I think it's great to know what you do want to do in life, but it's also equally as important to know what you don't, what isn't for you. We're all different. But no, thank you so much for having me. It's been an absolute pleasure, and it's really nice to talk about what I love, really, and pass on any knowledge that I do have, because it was definitely something that I needed when I first started, and there wasn't, this podcast would have been fantastic for me to kind of feel like I wasn't the only person, looking to kind of go into this area and, what should I do, looking for some advice. So no, it's been an absolute pleasure, and nice to chat to you about all things legal translation.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure it's been really, really useful for a lot of people. And if you're listening and you have found this really useful, go and send Nicole a message and let her know. Yeah,
thank you. I would love to hear from you.
Thanks again for coming on. It's been really great to chat with you. Bye.
Thanks so much, Dot. Take care. Bye.
Thanks for listening to the legal translation episode of the Meet the Translator podcast. I hope you found Nicole's knowledge and experience as interesting as I have. Make sure to check out the show notes if you want to get in touch with Nicole, and email meetthetranslator@gmail.com if you have any questions or comments about the podcast. Thanks again to Nicole for joining me today. See you next time.